It's Calgary's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
So welcome to the show, Steve, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, well, let's jump right in. And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about how you got started as a social entrepreneur and your journey that's kind of taken you to where you are today?
Yeah, my journey of being a social entrepreneur, it wasn't intended to be that. It wasn't something that I thought I'd be doing. My journey was, I was an athlete. I was a bobsledder, which meant that my journey was usually like running for 5 seconds and sitting for a minute, wearing tights with 3 other dudes. That was my journey. And right at the end of my bobsled career, my sister and I was living this life that a 10-year-old kid in us would have just dreamt about and would have thought was amazing. And we wanted to do something about it. And I realized that going to the 2010 Olympics was probably my last chance to have a kind of voice as an athlete and have that kind of influence on kids, or what I thought would be my last chance. And we wanted to just do something with it. Our parents were teachers. My sister was getting her PhD in education and had been a teacher. Part of my degree was in education. And we just thought that we could do something more impactful than the school visits that, I would do, that anybody would do. That would be, that did or didn't make a difference. Or I'd walk away and say, if 1 or 2 kids listened, it's worth my time. So it really, it started off from just wanting to solve a problem that we saw. We wanted kids to see there was more than just 2.5 weeks of glory on television. I wanted to talk to kids in schools about more than just health and fitness. And I saw an opportunity to share my journey, and the technology was there. And I was a tech geek, and Classroom Champions is rooted in scaled mentorship, which is virtual and being able to solve some big problems from not being able to have enough role models in communities to helping teachers talk about things. So yeah, my path started not from wanting to be an entrepreneur, but rather just wanting to do something that would make a difference right at the end of my sport career.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about Classroom Champions and what the organization is about?
I guess before I jump too far down that road, I should mention that. So Classroom Champions is an international education and mentorship organization that works across the US and Canada. And we partner athletes and elite athletes, whether they be Olympians or Paralympians or NCAA athletes or pro athletes, with schools and classrooms for year-long mentorship and curriculum and content. So we also provide what's called social emotional learning, SEL, in the schools, which is a new way for schools to look at how they're addressing soft skills, basically, goal setting ability, perseverance, empathy, self-regulation, which are really the key factors for kids to succeed in school. And Classroom Champions support schools in 34 states and every province and territory to do that. And this year alone, we'll reach over 10 million kids.
Wow, that's amazing, actually. And I know that you are a North American organization, but you're headquartered in Calgary. And our podcast is really about what it's like to do business in Calgary. So can you tell us a little bit about why you ended up setting up your headquarters in Calgary?
Yeah, so we, it's a good question. I mean, Calgary's home. Calgary's, being an American, I've been in Calgary now for the better part of 17 years. My wife is from Strathmore, and the registered charity, the organization is a nonprofit and charity, a registered charity in Canada, 501c3 in the US. We just operate together, which is a whole nother set of circumstances when you're talking about trying to build a business. But, being in Calgary for us, proves advantageous in a few different ways. One is that with the dollar exchange right now, most of our income, or majority of our income, is coming in US dollars, but we're spending a lot of it on staff that are supporting the US organization, so in Canadian dollars. So there's a dollar exchange advantage that we have from a personnel standpoint, having healthcare provided here. So that's more of a Canadian advantage than an Alberta advantage. But also being here, we're also talking about a town that is, not only philanthropic, but entrepreneurial. So as we're trying to grow an organization that's really bringing a concept of scaled mentorship from 0 to 1, there is nobody who does the things that we do, that's changing the way that people who are doing big things interact with schools, and the way that an organization kind of can get behind that and support teachers and schools to implement those things that actually make, measured differences in schools, whether it be attendance or behavior. Alberta has this entrepreneurial spirit to it, that there are so many people around here who either want to help out in the communities in Calgary or Alberta and Western Canada, and they work with us to do that, whether that be in north of Fort St. John or right here in Northeast Calgary. But also, I have no lack of mentors for myself of people who have started businesses from 0 to 1. So those are a few things that I look at of why we've decided to plant our roots here.
And speaking of mentors, is there a piece of advice that you've received over the years that's really stuck with you, or maybe some coaching that's really helped you as you've set up and run Classroom Champions?
Yeah, yes. I've gotten some of the classic advice from, one of our largest sponsors, somebody who built a company from 0 to hundreds of thousands of barrels a day, who early on in our building of staff, gave what is now, like, to me, classic advice of, hire smart people and put them around you. I do and don't subscribe to those theories. I mean, I also think that, it's okay to know what you're talking about. It's okay to it's also okay as a leader to know what you're doing, and not just have to surround yourself by smart people, which was, also advice that I've gotten from a mentor that I have now, which is, gives leaders a little bit more permission as well to not kind of just say, oh, I don't do anything, I don't know anything. I just surround myself with smart people and they get it done. And you hear that a lot. And I think it's also actually pretty self-defeating. And, a mentor of mine from out east, a guy named John Berardi, who started recently, started Precision Nutrition and was one of our nutritionists back in the day, who's got a great new book out called Changemakers, or Changemaker Academy. He's really been somebody who, when you're an entrepreneur and you're going through ups and downs, and you go through, whether they be mental health struggles or whether you're going through, people challenges, it's really nice to have some people around you who have been there before, who've had those problems and had those challenges and had to figure it out. So you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel every time. Right.
And I'm curious, what have you taken from your history and knowledge as a professional athlete into what you're doing now as an entrepreneur? Like, what have you been able to bring forward from that time in life?
It's hit and miss. There are plenty of parallels in sport. You see athletes go and talk to business leaders all the time. I think there are a lot of parallels in sport, and there are a lot of things that just straight don't work. Some of the things that do work for me are, like, we used to look at, in the wind tunnel, we would look at, 1 inch differences or half an inch differences in where our shoulders are positioned for drag, and what that would mean for us going down the hill, going 150 kilometers an hour, and, talking about Whistler, where we won our gold medal, the fastest track in the world, and you're hitting 100 kilometers an hour by curve 2. So those little differences. So finding ways to really pay attention to the details, and whether you're a leader or whether you are on the ground floor and getting the work done, is paying attention to those details is really important. And that's something that from sport, was constant. I would wake up and having an extra egg or 2 meant an extra 6 or 12 grams of protein, which helped me recover that much more, which helped me finish the 1 more rep. And it's really hard when you're an athlete, when your goal is 4 years away. Yeah. As a business leader, if you're building a business, you have to have patience. You can't just look tomorrow and the next day. You do have to address problems. If you're hurt, you have to address the problems. If your business is about to go under, you have to address that today problem. But hopefully you're not living in that space, so you're actually able to plan out. And for us, they call it quads, so 4 years out. So as a business leader, being able to think, if I have an injury today, understanding that I have to address it, but also understanding that there's a bigger context, that I can't address it by doing something that's going to hurt me 4 years down the road. On the flip side, I think empathy in sport is maybe not necessarily an athlete's specialty or strong suit, but when you get in the working world and you're trying to motivate people who maybe aren't all on the same wavelength, you as a business owner, you as an entrepreneur, no one cares more about your business than you. Mm-hmm. When you're on a bobsled team with 4 people, all four of you care equally about winning that gold medal. And, to expect the people around you to rise up to that level of caring in your own business may or may not be realistic. So I think you have to have more empathy for that. You have to be able to work with people and find ways for them to balance their lives a little bit. You want them to enjoy it. You want them to work hard, but you also have to expect that maybe they won't, hit some work at 7:00 on a Saturday night.
Right. And so what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe thinking, I really would like to do something meaningful with my life, but I do have this entrepreneurial spirit and interested in doing something similar to you, where you found a blend to do both. Is there any advice that you could pass along?
I mean, get after it. I left consulting. I was, had a great job consulting after I was bobsledding, and my day rate was what my monthly stipend used to be as an athlete. It was fantastic. And I just woke up one day and realized that it's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I was in the unique situation where at 31 years old, the summer after we won our gold medal, I was sitting back in Buffalo with some of my friends that I grew up with. And one of the guys turned to me and said, what's it feel like to write the first line of your obituary at age 31? And that'll wake you up when you realize that the best thing you've ever done might be behind you at 31 years old, hopefully a third of the way into my life. And I just thought, that's not going to be me. I don't want that to be me. So that's been a big motivator for me personally, is find the motivation. For me, it was, I want to do something that would be so impactful that a gold medal would be second or third on my, in my obituary in my life. And I wanted that for myself. I wanted that for the time, my future family. And now my little girl, I want her to see that you can do something really, really big in one area, and then you can leave that area. You can go do something really, really big in another area. So I say to people that, if you feel like you've accomplished some things that you want and you're ready for a change, there are ways that you can do that. If you don't feel like you're in a position to accomplish something the things that you want in life, I've never been happier, and I've never felt more challenged. Most athletes leave their sporting career thinking that they're never going to have something that is that they're that passionate about, and it causes depression. It causes malaise for much of their life, or causes anger. And for me, I was able to have something that I would not trade that 10-year period of my 20s disappearing, going down bobsled tracks, traveling the world, and doing something that, I never thought I could actually do, to then now having the opportunity to work with, Olympians and Paralympians and NFL players and NHL players and NCAA student athletes, and have them teach millions of kids how they've done it. So there's a longer-winded way of saying to people that you're not too far down a path to make a change and go out and start your own thing. And we do live in a place where that's possible.
And what are the parallels, do you think, between running a not-for-profit and, say, more of a traditional business?
Yeah.
You must see a lot of similarities.
There is. It's the same. I mean, I think I have this conversation quite often where not-for-profit simply has two bottom lines.
Mm-hmm.
A for-profit has one bottom line, the bottom line. A for-profit or a non-profit has two bottom lines, and the first bottom line, bottom line one and bottom line 1B are money. You have to have the money to do it, and you have to have the impact. You have to make the impact, because if you're not making the impact, you can't raise the resources to then be able to go make the impact. So it is this circular, or back and forth line that goes between making impact, creating impact and value for people, whatever part of society you're working in, and actually having the money to go do it. So I think that, the CRA, the Canadian government, has started to really open their eyes on that one. The overhead myth within the nonprofit sector is starting to go away. I was shocked when I first got into the nonprofit world about the concept of overhead. And, we look at Classroom Champions to run lean, and we look to be efficient with our resources, but I also don't want that to drive our business case. And I don't want that to drive our impact, because I think we're better off, and I think our kids are better off in our organization being in a place where this organization is investing in itself to reach more kids, to get out there more, to be able to attract more people to be a part of what we're doing. So I think that in the nonprofit space, where I've really been trying to push people is you have to invest in a business, and entrepreneurs know that. And I think the CRA is getting on board with that, and I think society is getting on board with more and more of that, where we have to operate in this space more like a business and invest in it.
And so, what is your vision for Classroom Champions? Where do you hope to take the organization over the next few years?
We are just in the process ourselves of expanding and pivoting in the way that we do it. We've been a donor and fundraiser and sponsor-based organization for the better part of a decade now. We've seen a wonderful opportunity, especially in the U.S. market, to enter the market in a way that allows us to sell curriculum and provide curriculum to schools that are now paying for it. You're seeing, when we started 10 years ago in the U.S., there was one state that had legislation, legislating and mandating social emotional learning, SEL, in schools. In the U.S. now, you've got 17 states that do that, another 15 that operate like that, and there's legislation, there's dollars. So we're investing we've just invested this year in a new platform that we're going to be able to automate a lot of what we do, and the relationships that we connect athletes who are currently competing to kids and the content that we create. So where I see us going now is, first in the US and then doing the same thing in Canada, offering really for us the barrier. We've had a wait list of schools and teachers for years. We've had a wait list of athletes in all kinds of genre of sport who are waiting to do something like this, because what we do is we provide them a way to connect and make a difference with kids that's measurable while not interrupting training, and they can do it from wherever they are in the world. So for Classroom Champions, we're going to be the place where athletes come to make a difference. We're going to be the place where schools come to actually, work with us to get curriculum into their schools that's going to help them change the culture and the fabric of what they're doing. And that's what I'm so excited. I mean, organizations that are doing this, well, are $30 to $40 million a year nonprofits that are getting content into millions of kids' hands. We're creating partnerships with the Canadian Olympic Committee and Canadian Paralympic Committee to do that in Canada. We have a big announcement coming up with them in the next November 15th or 14th, and an amazing ambassador, Canadian athlete ambassador, who's going to be a part of that. In the U.S., we're announcing a partnership in January with a major media outlet and a major education platform that's going to get our content in front of 10 million kids. So I'm excited for the opportunities those things are building. And within the entrepreneurship world, partnerships and doing things across a space are really important, especially in today's world where people can get so many things so easily if you can serve everybody in that way. But also in the nonprofit sphere, when somebody can come to us and donate to us, and they can both impact First Nations youth, in the city of Calgary, while at the same time impacting kids in Camden, New Jersey, across the river from Philadelphia, or Yellowknife, and we can be a place that they can do that. I'm really proud of what our team has built.
Yeah, we have a lot to be excited about these days then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're going to switch gears a bit, and I'd like to just ask you a few personal questions that help our listeners get to know you a little bit better.
All right, let's do it.
First one is circling back to Calgary. Do you have a favorite spot here in the city that you like to go when you just need to maybe de-stress a bit or recharge your creative batteries? Where do you like to hang out?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a 2-year-old daughter right now. So for me, it is it's going to the zoo with her. It's going to the park with her. Because when I can sit back and watch, for those of you who have kids or have friends with kids, and the energy a 2.5-year-old brings, can't help you realize that everything's going to be okay. So, I've gotten to the zoo lately, which doesn't sound nearly as exciting as it, as what, those favorite things used to be 5 years ago. But for now, that's my favorite place to go.
Well, and Calgary has an awesome zoo.
We do.
With pandas, so it's awesome. So tell me, if you weren't doing what you do now for work, what do you think you would be doing as a career?
I'd be coaching.
Coaching?
Yeah, I'd be coaching, whether it be bobsled or track. I'd be coaching for sure.
And can you tell us about a favorite book that you're reading or one that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yes. I'm trying to think, what did I read recently? Just read Ask by Ryan Levesque. It's a really great, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's a great book for the audience right now. It talks about sales and talks about funnels, and it talks about audience and how to take advantage of a digital world. I really enjoyed that. Art of Racing in the Rain is one of my favorites. I read it a little bit. I'd read it well before the movie came out, and then just reread it. I think it's a great, just like a separate book, a fiction book that's out of work. I think, and I've gotten into listening to books a lot lately too. So I am a slow reader. That was always like a big barrier for me for reading a lot. Was I'm just a slow reader. Like my wife can read 3 times fast. If we're looking at a computer screen, she is through the computer screen before I'm a third of the way through the page. And that's what you get for marrying an academic. But for me now, I can listen, and I'm tearing through books at 2.5 times speed now. So I get through. Another really great one is Range by David Epstein.
Mm-hmm.
That is probably my current favorite book right now. I've read it or listened to it 2.5 times at this point. Gets into how the concept is how generalists will triumph in a specialized world, where the whole world is getting more and more specialized, and you have to be in such a small sliver to be successful. And it talks about how much more successful people are with a broader range of skills.
Awesome. And what about podcasts? Do you have any that you are kind of your go-tos, or?
Yeah, Masters of Scale with Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn. Masters of Scale is definitely that's been my go-to for the last couple of years now. Trying to grow an organization. In the early days, he's got Zuckerberg on there, and he's got Reed Hastings from Netflix on there, and he's going through some really amazing people who have built some crazy things, whether they be products or others. So yeah.
And I'm sure being an athlete, you would have had a routine, but do you have like some non-negotiables either in the morning or at night before you kind of wind down for the day that are what you need to do to really keep yourself in the right mindset?
I don't have anything that I would call non-negotiable. I don't believe in those. I believe if you have non-negotiables, you set yourself up for failure, because like circumstances are going to change and you're going to get knocked off your game. And if you all of a sudden have a non-negotiable and you can't do it that morning because life happened, you can't let it can't let something like that throw you off your game. As an athlete, I learned that a long time ago. The Olympic race started at 1:00. It didn't matter what happened from 7 a.m. until 1. It started, the race was going at 1. If I had a non-negotiable, well, no, I've got to do this, this, and this until we race. That's not up to me. So I have things I love to do. I like to wake up early, go downstairs, press some coffee. I'm a coffee snob now at this point. Our office is in Bow Valley Square, thanks to Oxford. And we got Monogram over here. We've got Analog over here. We've got, DeVille over here. But in the morning, I like to, go through the ritual of, grinding the beans, getting the coffee going, have some greens, sit at my computer for 30 to 45 minutes and get some work done between 5 and 5:45, and then go downstairs to the gym and work out for an hour, and then get going with my day. So that's my preference, is to be able to do something like that in the morning.
Yeah. And what's your favorite place in the world to visit? Do you have a favorite vacation spot, or?
Yeah, Munich, Germany. I learned to speak German when I was a bobsledder. When you're locked up in hotel rooms for 5 months with the guys on tour, and half that time is spent in German-speaking countries, I like the concept of being able to just walk out and go get coffee. And we spent 2 weeks in Munich before, in between the first half and second half of season during the Olympic year, going into Vancouver. And not many times in my life I've been happier than that, and gone back with my wife, and just love my favorite little restaurant, Andixer am Dom, which is a block and a half off Marienplatz, which is this big square in the middle of Munich. And it's just my favorite restaurant in the world, this Germanic style, low ceilings across from a church kind of place.
Awesome. Sounds like a place to put on the must-see list.
Oh, it's, if we, as Classroom Champions grows, and one of our goals is to be global, and the system that we have and the way that we interact with athletes, we've presented to the International Olympic Committee in Lausanne, and we solve problems for whether they be professional teams like one of our partnerships with the Buffalo Bills, or whether they be for Olympic committees, like Team Canada or in the US. We solve the problem of engaging currently competing people, whether they be Olympians or other athletes. And to me, a big responsibility to that is making sure that we grow this thing so that more kids across the country, more kids across the world get access to the knowledge that these people have to be successful. And we're not teaching kids sport, we're not teaching kids how to bobsled, but being able to give them access to what it means to achieve a goal, what it means to persevere, doing it in a demonstrable way. So hopefully one day we can set up an office in Munich and we can spend a few years over there doing that.
That would be awesome. Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I have a hypothetical question that we ask all of our guests in every city that we have a podcast. So I want you to imagine that there is this small, beautiful tropical island pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And we are going to drop you off there. And there is no technology. You can't bring your iPhone or anything like that. But when you're ready to leave, you can just, there is one payphone and you can give us a call and we'll come pick you up. So curious to know how long you think you would last and what you would do while you're there.
Is there food here?
Yeah, you can assume that the basics are taken care of.
Talking food or Uber Eats or pizza? Like, what are we talking?
There's no Uber Eats, but there'll be some healthy tropical food for you.
Oh, I could last forever there. Yeah. I mean, is my family with me?
Well, no.
By myself.
You're by yourself. Yes.
Oh, so I have to leave a little curly-haired girl.
Yes.
Oh, back. I mean, I would last as long as I think that it wouldn't like developmentally delay her. Which, I mean, she may be better off without me there. So who knows? I think if there was no family there, I could last. I could, I could go as long as I need to. I feel like I'm very content with the things I've accomplished in life, and I'm very full and fulfilled by those things. So I don't necessarily live my life thinking I need to accomplish more. I live my life thinking I want to accomplish more. I would have been perfectly happy to bring it back to the beginning. I would have been perfectly happy with the first line of my obituary to be won an Olympic gold medal and was the best in the world at something. That would have been great. I just, that would have been fine, but I wanted more and I want more. So, I think let's call it a month. And I think, Brett would probably be, happy enough to see me by the time I got home at that point.
Yeah. And you know what? That's a lot longer than most of the people we ask. So that's great. We'll nominate you for Survivor. So before we go, Steve, do you have anything else that you'd like to either say or kind of pass along to our listening audience?
I'm excited for what Classroom Champions has coming. I think keep an eye out for Classroom Champions this spring, late winter, spring. I am positive that there will be something for most people out there, whether they have families or kids, or they're an educator, or they're a company that is looking to do big things. Like we want to get together and find some really great partners that do stuff and help us do the things that are coming down the line. So, nothing else to add other than keep an eye out for Classroom Champions coming up. And for everybody out there listening who's grinding away, it is hard work being an entrepreneur. It's hard work. It is, it's not a task that anybody takes lightly. It is your heart, it is your soul. It is, it is your excitement. It is your depression. It is your financial gain. It is your financial ruin, all at the same time, all within one day sometimes. So I thank you guys for putting something on that, can help entrepreneurs connect with each other and help us find inspiration in what other people are doing and find empathy in what other people are doing. So, keep up the great work, and thank you so much. And I'm so honored and humbled to be invited onto something like this.
Well, thank you. And why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you online and they can connect with you, they can follow you. What are the best ways to find you?
I mean, at Steve Mesler on Twitter is probably a really great way. And then classroomchampions.org. So at Steve, STEVEMESLER on Twitter, and classroomchampions.org for the organization.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being our guest today. It was really fun to talk to you, and I'm sure that our listeners learned a lot from you. Great to chat about social entrepreneurship and Olympic gold medals and everything else that we covered today. So thank you so much for being on the show.
And running around with guys in tights too. So.
That's the headline. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.